Hey there, welcome to Red Moon Diaries. Today we will be listening to more spine-chilling tales, so turn the lights off and let's dive right in. Oh, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share the video. The night was already a mess. My flight had been delayed, then rerouted, and now it was well past midnight. All I wanted was my own bed. I pulled out my phone, a weary sigh escaping my lips, and booked an Uber from the deserted airport curb. The app showed Gary M. in a black sedan. A few minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up. As the driver stepped out to open the trunk for my suitcase, I noticed something immediately unsettling. He was wearing what looked like a police uniform, dark blue, crisp, with what appeared to be an official-looking badge pinned to his chest, but something felt off. He wasn't wearing a hat, and his hair was a bit too long for regulation. More importantly, the uniform seemed a little too perfect, almost like a costume, and his movements were fluid, not quite the stiff, deliberate way real officers moved. My internal alarm bells, usually a distant chime, began to ring a little louder. "Good evening," he said, his voice surprisingly soft, almost a whisper, as he slid back into the driver's seat. He didn't introduce himself or confirm my name, which most drivers usually did. He just started driving, pulling away from the dimly lit terminal. I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe he was an off-duty cop or security, but the more I looked, the more details seemed wrong. The badge glinted under the dashboard lights, but the emblem on it seemed generic, not a city or state seal I recognized. And his belt wasn't quite right. No service weapon, no radio, none of the usual police gear, just an empty holster. "Long night?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. There was a strange intensity in his gaze that made me shrink back slightly. "Yeah, flight delays," I mumbled, pulling my phone closer, the screen a faint comfort in the growing darkness of the car. I suddenly opened the Uber app, checking his profile again. Gary M. No mention of being an officer or security. My heart started to quicken. This was just weird. He started driving faster than seemed necessary, weaving through the sparse traffic with an almost reckless abandon. My grip tightened on my seatbelt. My eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, then to the fake badge. The unease solidified into genuine fear. This wasn't right. I decided to test him. Are you a police officer?" I asked, my voice feigning casual curiosity, but my palms were sweating. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Something like that," he said, and his eyes in the mirror seemed to linger on me for a fraction too long. A chilling glint I couldn't quite decipher. "Just doing my duty?" Duty to what? My stop was still a good 20 minutes away. The city lights were fading behind us as he took an unfamiliar exit, heading towards a darker, less populated area. My breath hitched. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My address is my address." He didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on the road, but that faint, unsettling smile played on his lips again. The car was accelerating. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an off-duty cop. This was something far more sinister. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I tried to dial 911. Just as the call connected, he glanced at me in the mirror. His smile vanished. "Problem?" he snarled, his voice suddenly sharp, completely different from his earlier soft tone. I didn't answer. I pressed the phone to my ear, whispering, "Yes, I'm in an Uber. The driver, he's wearing a fake police uniform and he's taking me somewhere. I need help."
As the words left my mouth, he slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt in the middle of the dark, deserted road. Before I could even process it, he threw the car into park, his hand flying to the door handle. "You shouldn't have done that," he hissed, his face contorted in a mask of pure rage. He unbuckled his seatbelt, his movements sudden and violent. My heart hammered against my ribs. I screamed into the phone, "He's getting out! He's coming for me!" He yanked his door open, and I saw a flash of metal. Not a gun, but something else. Something I couldn't quite make out in the gloom. He was coming around the car. I threw myself at the passenger door, fumbling with the lock, tears streaming down my face. My fingers slipped, my breath caught. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance, faint but unmistakably real. The sound of the police. He froze. His head snapped up, listening. The sirens grew louder, closer. A guttural sound of frustration ripped from his throat. He slammed his car door shut, threw it into drive, and sped off, tires squealing, leaving me alone in the dark, deserted road. I stood there, shaking, still clutching my phone, the sirens growing to a deafening roar as a real police cruiser rounded the bend, its lights painting the trees in stark blue and red. They found me, shivering and hyperventilating. Later, the police told me there had been other reports. Other women picked up by an Uber driver in a similar fake police uniform. Some of them hadn't been found. The realization hit me then, a cold, crushing wave. I had been terrifyingly close to becoming one of them. The image of his eyes in the rearview mirror, that chilling, knowing smile, would forever haunt my dreams.
It was a Friday night, and I was finally heading home after a stressful week. I booked an Uber, just looking forward to kicking off my shoes and ordering takeout. The app showed a Sarah K driving a silver sedan. When she pulled up, she was exactly as pictured, a pleasant-looking woman in her late 30s with a warm smile. "Hey there, Sarah, right?" she chirped, her voice friendly and inviting. "Hop on in." I smiled back, feeling a sense of relief. A nice driver for once. I tossed my bag onto the back seat and buckled up. The ride started normally enough. We made small talk about the weather, weekend plans, the usual pleasantries. She seemed perfectly normal, even charming. I felt my tension from the week slowly melt away. About 15 minutes into the ride, just as we were turning onto a less busy street that served as a shortcut to my neighborhood, she let out a little sigh. "Oh, darn it," she said, tapping the steering wheel. "Would you believe it? My trunk light has been acting up all day. It keeps flicking on and off. I've been meaning to get it looked at." I nodded sympathetically. "That's annoying." "It really is," she agreed, then glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her smile still in place, but with a hint of what seemed like genuine exasperation. "Would you mind, actually? It's just flashing on and off right now. If you could just pop out and give it a little jiggle or see if something's caught in the latch, I can't really see from up here." I hesitated for a split second. It was a bit odd, but she seemed so genuinely flustered, and it felt like a small, harmless request. Plus, she'd been so friendly. Sure," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. She pulled over immediately, stopping the car on a dark stretch of road away from any streetlights. The engine cut out, plunging us into near silence, save for the distant hum of the city. My initial pleasant feeling was replaced by a faint prickle of unease. Why here? "Thanks so much, actually," she said, her smile unwavering as she leaned over and popped the trunk release. A soft click echoed through the quiet car. I got out, my phone still clutched in my hand, its screen a dim light in the darkness. The air was suddenly cooler. I walked around to the back of the car. The trunk lid was slightly ajar. I reached for it, and as I did, a flicker of movement caught my eye from within the trunk's shadowy depths. Something dark and indistinct. My heart gave a tiny involuntary lurch. "Anything?" she called out from the front of the car, her voice still light. I pulled the trunk lid up further, trying to peer inside. It was almost completely dark, but I could make out shapes. Lumpy, irregular shapes. and then a faint, metallic smell that made my stomach churn. It wasn't the smell of a broken car. It was something else. My breath hitched. Before I could fully process what I was seeing, before I could scream, I felt the sudden, brutal shove from behind. A pair of strong hands slammed into my back, propelling me forward. My head smacked hard against the edge of the trunklet, stars exploding behind my eyes, and I was falling, tumbling headfirst into the dark, putrid depths. A guttural laugh, no longer friendly or charming, ripped through the night air. Gotcha! My body crumpled into the trunk, landing on something soft but firm, and the metallic smell was suddenly overpowering. My mind screamed, "Trap!" My legs were still dangling out, but the lid was already beginning to descend. Panic surged through me, raw and electrifying. With a desperate, animalistic surge of adrenaline, I screamed, a choked, terrified sound, and flailed wildly. My right foot, still outside, connected with something hard, her leg. She grunted in pain, her grip on the trunklet faltering for a crucial second. That was all I needed. I pushed with all my might, pushing back against the closing lid, clawing at the edge of the trunk opening. My fingers scrabbled for purchase, found the lip of the trunk and pulled. Her hands were on the lid, pushing down, but I was fighting with the strength of pure terror. There was a sickening ripping sound as my shirt tore. I pulled my body half out, my face scraping against the rough metal. She let out a frustrated growl, lunging forward, trying to grab my ankle. But I was already scrambling. I hit the ground hard, rolling away from the car, my head throbbing, my entire body screaming. I scrambled to my feet, not daring to look back, not daring to wait. My phone was still clutched in my hand. I sprinted into the darkness, not knowing where I was going, just running. The terrifying image of the open trunk and its shadowy contents burned into my mind. I heard the car engine roar to life behind me, tires squeaming as she sped off, leaving me alone, gasping for breath in the dead of night. I collapsed beside a ditch, tears streaming down my face, shaking uncontrollably as I dialed 911, the metallic smell from the trunk still filling my nostrils, a chilling reminder of how close I had come to disappearing into its dark, final secret. Light rain against the window. I stared out at the blurry city lights, my mind numb with exhaustion. Another late night at work, another long Uber ride home. I just wanted to collapse into bed. The driver was quiet, which was fine by me. The less small talk, the better. Then, a low, almost inaudible whistling began. I barely registered it at first, just a faint sound beneath the hum of the engine. I probably just needed more sleep. But then, it grew a little clearer. A distinct melody, simple and odd. My brow furrowed. It wasn't a pop song or anything I had ever heard on the radio, just a strange, simple progression of notes. But it was familiar, deeply, unsettlingly familiar. The driver, a man in his 50s with a nondescript cap, kept whistling, seemingly lost in his own world. My breath hitched. A cold, leaden knot formed in my stomach. That whistle, it was his. It was Barry's, my brother. He used to whistle it constantly when we were kids, a silly little tune he'd made up himself. No one else knew it, not our parents, not our friends. Just Barry. A wave of nausea washed over me, hot and sudden. Barry did 2 years ago, a car crash. A rideshare driver. The details of that night, usually a blurry, painful fog, suddenly flashed behind my eyes with blinding clarity. The twisted metal, the flashing lights, the gut-wrenching call from the hospital. The whistling continued, steady and unwavering, each note a cruel echo from the past. It was impossible. It had to be a coincidence. But the tune was so unique, so obscure. My heart began to pound against my ribs, a frantic drum in the confined space of the car. "Excuse me?" My voice was a shaky whisper, barely audible over the whistling. The driver stopped, mid-note. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. They were dark,
unreadable like two black holes. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. "Is everything all right, miss?" he asked, his voice surprisingly smooth, a stark contrast to the rough edges of the whistling. My mind raced. Did he know? How could he know that song? Mark's death, the rideshare driver, it all coalesced into a terrifying mosaic in my mind. "That song," I managed, my voice still trembling. Where did you learn that song?" The driver's smile widened, just a fraction. He turned his head slightly, just enough to make eye contact again. "Oh, just a little tune I picked up along the way, a long time ago. Some unforgettable passengers leave quite an impression." A shiver, not of cold, but of pure, unadulterated terror racked my body. The car suddenly felt much smaller, the air thick and suffocating. I pressed myself against the door, my fingers fumbling blindly for the handle. My phone, still glowing faintly in my lap, seemed miles away. The city lights outside seemed to mock me, so close, yet impossibly far. The driver's smile widened further, exposing a glint of something cold and knowing in his eyes. He slowly began to whistle again, the same tune, but this time it was louder, clearer, each note a cruel whisper directly into my soul. My eyes darted to the GPS on his dashboard. We weren't going in the direction of my apartment anymore. We were turning onto a dark, unlit road, trees looming on either side like skeletal fingers. "Where are you going?" I stammered, my voice barely a croak. He didn't answer, just kept whistling, his eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. But in the rearview mirror, I saw his lips move silently, forming words I couldn't hear over the piercing tune. "He's waiting for you, Tiffany." My blood ran cold. I knew then with a sickening certainty that this wasn't just a coincidence. This wasn't just a ride, and I wasn't going home. I yanked at the door handle with all my might. It was locked. My breath hitched in my throat. I pounded on the window, screaming, but the sound was swallowed by the enclosed space and the relentless, haunting whistle. My eyes darted around the interior, desperate. The road became rougher, the car jolting. We were deep in the woods now. No streetlights, no other cars, just a dense, suffocating darkness, and that sound. The driver chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. He finally stopped whistling. "He missed you, Tiffany," he murmured, his voice now devoid of any pretense, chillingly familiar.
My heart seized. It couldn't be. "Who?" I choked out, though I already knew. The name caught in my throat. A silent scream. He slowed the car, then brought it to a gentle stop. The engine purred, a monstrous, alive thing in the suffocating silence. He turned fully to face me, and the dim glow of the dashboard illuminated his face. His eyes, in that moment, were not just dark, but seemed to hold an ancient, malevolent glee. And then he tilted his head, a gesture I knew so well, a habit Barry had. "Your brother," he whispered, a smile stretching wider, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp in the gloom. "And he wants to know why you weren't there to pick him up that night." A strangled sob tore from my throat. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I scrabbled for my phone, my fingers slipping. The driver just watched me, patient, his smile unwavering. Then, from the dense trees just beyond my window, a faint, almost imperceptible sound began. A whisper, like dry leaves scuttling, slowly growing into a low, mournful whistle. The same tune, Barry's tune. My gaze snapped to the window, and through the murky glass I saw a shadow detach itself from the darkness, coalescing into a form. It was tall, too tall, and its features were indistinct, a shifting silhouette, but I felt its presence, its cold. and the whistling grew louder, clearer just outside the car, right beside me. The driver leaned in, his sibilant hiss, "Time to go, Tiffany. He's been so lonely." I screamed, a primal, raw sound of pure terror as the shadowy figure pressed itself against the glass, and I knew with every fiber of my being that the car was no longer a refuge, but a cage, and my brother was finally home.